The slap came without warning, right there in the maternity ward, in front of doctors, nurses, and God himself. Have you ever trusted someone so completely that when they betrayed you, it didn't just break your heart, it shattered your entire reality? Isabella was 8 months pregnant, bleeding, terrified for her baby, and her billionaire husband was furious because she had interrupted his day. But what Damien Blackwell didn't know was that this slap would cost him everything. Stay with me, because revenge has never been served colder. If you love stories about karma, justice, and powerful comebacks, you're in the right place. Hit that like button right now, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because this story is about to get wild. The sound echoed through the hospital corridor like a gunshot. Isabella's head snapped to the side, her hand instinctively flying to her swollen belly as the sting spread across her cheek. 8 months pregnant, and she'd been brought in bleeding, cramping, convinced something was wrong with the baby. The monitors beeped steadily beside her. Dr. Patel's tablet clattered to the floor. A young nurse gasped, her hand covering her mouth. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to flicker in shock. Damien Blackwell stood over her, his hands still raised, fingers trembling not with remorse but with barely contained rage. His charcoal Brioni suit was immaculate except for a single wrinkle at the elbow where his fury had bunched the fabric. The suit had cost $12,000. Isabella knew, because she'd picked it up from the tailor herself, back when she still believed being the perfect wife mattered. His usually perfect hair was disheveled from running his fingers through it during the drive over. In his other hand, his phone was still glowing. Olivia's name pulsed on the screen like a second heartbeat, the call that had triggered this nightmare. "You embarrassed me," Damien hissed. His voice was low but deadly, the same tone he used in boardrooms when he wanted blood. "Calling me away from the vanguard pitch for this drama. Do you have any idea what you just cost me?" Isabella touched her burning cheek, her dark eyes filled with tears that had nothing to do with physical pain. She'd been rushed to the hospital with bleeding at 8 months pregnant. The doctor had said she needed emergency monitoring. The baby's heart rate had been irregular. She'd called Damien's office in a panic, and his secretary had interrupted his meeting. That was her crime, not the pregnancy complications, not the fear, not the possibility of losing their daughter. The interruption. "Sir, I need to ask you to leave," Dr. Patel said firmly. She stepped between them, her voice shaking slightly, but her stance protective. "This is completely unacceptable behavior in my hospital. I will have security remove you if necessary." Damien straightened his tie. The businessman mask slid back into place like he was adjusting a collar, but his eyes remained cold as winter steel as he looked down at Isabella. "Fix this mess," he said quietly. "I have real work to do." He walked away without another word. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the linoleum with the same rhythm as the baby's heartbeat on the monitor. The scent of his cologne lingered in the air. Tom Ford Noir. Isabella had given him that bottle for their 5th anniversary 3 months ago. Now it smelled like smoke after a fire. The silence that followed was deafening. A nurse with kind eyes and graying hair gently helped Isabella back onto the examination table. Her movements were careful, respectful, as if Isabella were made of glass. Another nurse retrieved Dr. Patel's tablet from the floor. No one spoke. No one knew what to say when they'd just witnessed a man strike his pregnant wife in a hospital. "Mrs. Blackwell," Dr. Patel said softly. She pulled up a stool and sat at eye level with Isabella. "Your baby is fine. The bleeding has stopped. Her heart rate is strong and steady. But I need to keep you overnight for observation. You don't need stress right now. Do you understand what I'm saying?" Isabella nodded. She couldn't speak yet. The words were stuck somewhere between her chest and her throat, tangled up with 5 years of excuses and justifications and desperate attempts to believe this wasn't who Damien really was. "Is there someone I can call for you?" Dr. Patel asked gently. "Family? A friend?" Isabella shook her head. Her family. God, her family. She hadn't spoken to her father in 5 years. Not since the wedding. Not since Lucien Moreau had stood in his Paris office and told her that Damien Blackwell was a climber, a user, a man who saw people as stepping stones. Not since she'd chosen love over wisdom and walked away from everything the Moreau name represented. The nurse brought her a cup of water and a heated blanket. Small comforts. Human kindness. It made Isabella want to cry harder than the slap had. As the medical staff bustled around preparing her room, Isabella stared out the window at the city lights. Manhattan glittered like scattered diamonds. Damien's company headquarters dominated the skyline, its logo glowing against the night sky. Blackwell Technologies, the name that had replaced her own. For 5 years, she'd stood by his side as he built his empire. She'd supported him at charity galas where she smiled until her face hurt. She'd entertained investors in their penthouse, playing hostess while he closed deals. She'd believed in him even when others called him ruthless, cutthroat, dangerous. Now she saw the truth with the clarity that only comes from a slap across the face. She wasn't his wife. She was another possession, a trophy that had lost its shine. And like all of Damien's possessions, she could be discarded the moment she became inconvenient. The baby kicked, a strong, deliberate movement against Isabella's ribs, as if her daughter was saying, "We're still here, Mama. We're still fighting." But Damien had made one critical mistake. He'd forgotten who her father was. Lucien Moreau wasn't just any CEO. He was the man who taught Isabella that respect was earned, not given. That strength came from standing up for what was right. That sometimes the only way to stop a bully was to hit back harder than they'd hit you. He'd also taught her that family was everything, and she'd thrown that lesson away for a man who just struck her in a hospital. Isabella pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. The screen was cracked. She didn't remember dropping it. Her contacts list glowed in the dim room. She scrolled past Damien's name, past his assistant, past the shallow friendship she'd cultivated in his social circle. She stopped at a number she'd kept, but never called. It was time to make a call that would change everything. The phone rang once, twice. "Dad," she whispered when he answered. "I need your help." The concern in Lucien Moreau's voice was immediate. "Zara, what's wrong? You sound upset." She looked down at her belly, then touched the red mark on her cheek that was already starting to fade. The physical evidence would disappear, but the memory would never fade. The humiliation, the fear, the realization that this wasn't the first time he'd been cruel. It was just the first time it had happened, in front of witnesses. "He hit me," she said simply. "At the hospital, in front of everyone." The silence on the other end was more terrifying than any shout could have been. Isabella heard something in the background, a sound like crystal meeting marble, his Scotch glass, she imagined, hitting the fireplace in his office. When Lucien finally spoke, his voice was calm, controlled, deadly. "I'm on my way. Don't move. Don't sign anything. Don't speak to him. I'm sending Marcus with the jet." As Isabella hung up, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. It felt fragile in her chest, like a bird with wet wings trying to fly. Damien thought he held all the power in their marriage. He thought she was trapped, dependent, helpless. He thought he could do whatever he wanted without consequences because she'd given up her family, her name, her inheritance to be with him. He thought he'd isolated her completely. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Outside her window, Damien's company logo continued to glow against the Manhattan skyline. Unaware that its days were numbered, Isabella closed her eyes and felt her daughter kick again. Stronger this time, as if she too was ready for the fight that was coming. The war was about to begin, and Damien had no idea what was headed his way. 3 days later, Isabella sat in her elegant living room surrounded by evidence of Nathan's betrayal. The penthouse had always felt more like a showroom than a home. Everything was carefully chosen by Damien's interior designer. Neutral tones, expensive art, furniture that looked beautiful but felt uncomfortable. She'd never been allowed to hang family photos or add personal touches. Now she understood why. This wasn't their home. It was his stage. Her laptop was open to bank statements she'd never seen before, accounts she didn't know existed. Her phone contained screenshots of text messages between Damien and Olivia that made her stomach turn. Financial documents were spread across the coffee table, like pieces of a puzzle, revealing a picture she'd never wanted to see. The house felt different now. Every expensive piece of furniture, every carefully chosen decoration suddenly felt like prison bars. Damien had insisted they live in this penthouse after they married. He'd claimed it was more convenient for his business, closer to headquarters, better for entertaining clients. Now she understood. It was easier to control her when she was surrounded by his things, in his territory, cut off from anything that reminded her of who she'd been before. Her laptop chimed with another email from the private investigator her father had recommended. James Morton was discreet, professional, and unfortunately very good at his job. The photos he'd sent made Isabella's hands shake. Damien and Olivia at expensive restaurants, holding hands across candlelit tables. At the theater, his arm around her waist in the private box he'd told Isabella was for clients. Kissing in the parking garage of his office building, the same garage where Isabella picked him up for dinner sometimes. But it was the financial information that truly shocked her. Damien had been systematically moving money out of their joint accounts into offshore holdings, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, Singapore. The transfers went back 18 months, small amounts at first, then increasingly larger sums. He'd taken out loans against her trust fund without her knowledge, forging her signature on documents she'd never seen. He'd used her family name as collateral for business deals, knowing investors would trust a Moreau connection even if she'd officially changed her name to Blackwell. Most damaging of all, he'd already filed preliminary divorce papers with a lawyer. The filing claimed Isabella was mentally unstable, citing her family history of mental health issues. It requested full custody of their unborn child, claiming Isabella was unfit to raise a daughter. The words on the screen blurred as tears filled her eyes. Unfit, unstable, dangerous. Isabella's phone buzzed. Another text message from Olivia to Damien, sent just an hour ago while Isabella sat in his living room reading about her own planned destruction. When are you going to tell her? I'm tired of sneaking around. The baby will be here soon, and I want us to be together openly. Damien's response made Isabella's blood run cold. Soon. I'm finalizing the arrangements to have her committed after the birth. Postpartum depression is so common, and with her family history of mental illness, it should be easy to prove. Don't worry, baby. Everything we've worked for is almost ours. Isabella stared at the message, read it 3 times, then a 4th. The words didn't change. Damien wasn't just planning to divorce her. He was planning to have her declared mentally incompetent so he could take everything. The trust fund her grandfather had established, the stock portfolio her father had built, the real estate holdings that would eventually pass to her, and most importantly, their daughter. She thought about her mother, who'd struggled with depression after Isabella's brother Marcus was born. It had been a difficult time. Her mother had needed medication and therapy for 2 years, but she'd recovered with proper treatment and support. It had been a private family matter, handled with care and compassion. Damien was going to twist that family history into a weapon, paint Isabella as genetically predisposed to mental illness, claim their daughter wasn't safe with her. The front door opened. Damien's voice echoed through the penthouse. Isabella, I'm home. She quickly closed the laptop and shuffled the papers into a neat stack, slipping them into her purse. By the time Damien appeared in the doorway, she was sitting calmly on the couch, hands folded over her belly, the picture of a dutiful wife waiting for her husband. How was your day? She asked. Her voice was steady, despite the rage burning in her chest like acid. Damien loosened his tie. His expression was carefully neutral. Long, important meetings. He glanced at her, and for a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or fear. How are you feeling? Any more bleeding? The doctor says everything is fine, Isabella replied. She kept her voice soft, non-threatening. The baby is healthy. Perfect heartbeat. Strong movements. Good. Damien moved to the bar cart and poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey. Macallan, 25. The bottle had cost $800. I've been thinking about what happened at the hospital. I was under a lot of stress and I reacted badly. It won't happen again. It wasn't an apology. It was a dismissal. Damien was telling her to forget it, move on, pretend it never happened. Just like she'd pretended not to notice him coming home late, smelling of unfamiliar perfume. Pretended not to see the way he smiled at his phone when he thought she wasn't looking. Pretended not to hear him taking calls in his office at midnight, speaking in low, intimate tones that were never meant for business. I understand, she said quietly. Damien relaxed slightly. He took a sip of his whiskey, thinking he'd successfully managed the situation. I have to go out of town next week. A conference in Chicago. 3 days. You'll be fine here, won't you? Isabella nodded. She already knew from the investigator's report that there was no conference. Damien and Olivia had booked a suite at the Four Seasons. They were planning a romantic getaway, while his 8 months pregnant wife stayed home alone. Of course, she said, I'll probably spend some time with my father. He's been worried about me since the hospital incident. Damien's hand tightened on his glass. The ice clinked against the crystal, There's no need to involve your father in our personal business, Isabella. These things happen in marriages. No need to make it into a family drama. He's going to be a grandfather soon, Isabella said carefully. It's natural that he'd be concerned about my well-being and the baby's health. Just keep things simple, Damien said. His tone carried a warning she'd learned to recognize over 5 years. No need to worry him with details. Your father and I have a complicated relationship. I don't want him getting the wrong idea about our marriage. After Damien went to his office to make phone calls, Isabella pulled out the secure phone her father had insisted she get, a completely separate device that Damien didn't know existed. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for, Sophia. Isabella, I need to see you tonight, if possible. It's urgent. Sophia Rodriguez had been her roommate in college, back when Isabella was still Isabella Moreau, and the world felt full of possibilities. Now Sophia was one of the most successful family law attorneys in the city, known for representing high-profile women in devastating divorces. More importantly, she was someone Isabella trusted completely. Of course, Sophia said immediately. Her voice was warm but professional. My office or somewhere else? Somewhere else, Isabella replied. This needs to be private, very private. They arranged to meet at a small cafe in Red Hook, far from Manhattan, far from Damien's usual haunts, far from anywhere they might be recognized. As Isabella prepared to leave, she looked around the penthouse one more time. Everything was beautiful, expensive, perfect, and none of it mattered. What mattered was the evidence in her purse and the plan forming in her mind. Damien thought he was so clever, so careful. He thought he'd covered all his bases, anticipated every move. He'd isolated her from her family, controlled their finances, positioned himself as the stable, successful husband, and her as the fragile, emotional wife. But he'd forgotten one crucial detail. Isabella Moreau Blackwell was not some helpless victim. She was Lucien Moreau's daughter. She'd grown up watching her father navigate corporate warfare. She'd inherited more than just his business sense. She'd inherited his ability to plan, to strategize, to wage war when necessary. Damien had mistaken her silence for weakness, her compliance for defeat, her love for stupidity. He was about to learn the difference. The small cafe was nearly empty when Isabella arrived just after 8. She'd taken an Uber instead of the car service Damien monitored. Her baseball cap was pulled low, and sunglasses hid her face despite the evening hour. She spotted Sophia immediately. Her friend's distinctive red hair was visible even from across the room. Sophia stood up as Isabella approached. Her expression shifted from concern to alarm as she took in her friend's appearance. The weight loss, despite the pregnancy, the dark circles under her eyes, the way Isabella moved like someone expecting to be struck. Oh my God, Zara, you look exhausted, Sophia said. She pulled her into a gentle hug, careful of her belly. Are you okay? Is the baby okay? They settled into a corner booth away from the few other customers. Isabella pulled out her secure phone and showed Sophia the screenshots she'd gathered, the text messages between Damien and Olivia, the financial transfers, the preliminary divorce filing, the plan to have her committed. As Sophia read through everything, her expression grew progressively darker. Her jaw clenched, her eyes hardened. By the time she reached the messages about Isabella's planned institutionalization, her hands were shaking. This is conspiracy, Sophia said finally. Fraud, emotional abuse, attempted theft. Her voice was low and controlled, but Isabella heard the fury underneath. How long has this been going on? I don't know, Isabella admitted. Maybe months, maybe longer. I was so focused on the pregnancy, on trying to be the perfect wife, that I missed all the signs. Or maybe I saw them and convinced myself I was imagining things. Sophia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly. That's my assistant. I told her to clear my schedule for the next few hours. We're going to need time to go through all of this properly. They spent the next 2 hours documenting everything Isabella had discovered. Sophia took notes on her tablet, asking sharp questions that helped Isabella see patterns she'd missed. The financial manipulation was extensive and sophisticated. Damien had been planning this for at least 6 months, possibly longer. Every transfer, every forged signature, every secret account had been carefully constructed to leave Isabella with nothing We need to involve your father, Sophia said finally. This isn't just about divorce proceedings anymore. Damien's company has been facilitating these financial crimes. If we can prove that he's been using corporate resources to hide assets and defraud you, we can go after him on multiple fronts, civil and potentially criminal. Isabella nodded. She'd been thinking the same thing. I'm scared, Sophia. What if he really tries to have me committed? What if he takes my daughter? What if he's powerful enough to make this all disappear? That's not going to happen, Sophia said firmly. She reached across the table and gripped Isabella's hand. Not on my watch, but we need to move carefully. Damien clearly has resources and connections. He's been planning this for months. We need to make sure we're prepared for whatever he throws at us. They arranged to meet again the following evening, this time with Lucien Moreau in attendance. As they parted ways outside the cafe, Sophia gripped Isabella's hand tightly. You're not alone in this, she said. Remember that. You walked away from your family for him, but they never walked away from you. Your father has been waiting 5 years for you to call. Trust me, Damien Blackwell has no idea what's about to hit him. Are you feeling this yet? Because Isabella is about to show the world what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. Drop a comment telling me, would you forgive Damien or make him pay? And if you haven't liked this video yet, what are you waiting for? The next day, Isabella went through the motions of her normal routine while Damien was at the office. She attended her prenatal appointment where Dr. Patel checked her carefully and asked gentle questions about her safety at home. She had lunch with a friend from her book club, someone from Damien's social circle who talked about vacation homes and charity galas, while Isabella smiled and nodded. She picked up dry cleaning and stopped by the grocery store. On the surface, everything looked normal. Beneath, she was planning a war. That evening, she drove to her father's office building. Robert Sterling Industries occupied 15 floors of a gleaming tower in the financial district. Actually, she realized with a start, the building was Moreau Global now. She'd been away so long she'd forgotten her father had renamed the company after her grandfather. She'd spent countless hours here as a child, playing in the conference rooms while her father worked late, learning about business and strategy before she was old enough to understand what any of it meant. Now she was returning as an adult in crisis. Lucian's personal elevator whisked her directly to his executive floor. His assistant Michelle was waiting with a concerned smile. Your father is in the small conference room, Michelle said. Can I get you anything? Water? Tea? Water would be great, Isabella said. Thank you. The conference room overlooked the city, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of Manhattan at night. Lucien stood at those windows when Isabella entered. At 65, he moved with the confidence of a man who'd spent decades building and protecting his business empire. He was tall like Marcus, with silver hair and the same storm-gray eyes Isabella saw in her own mirror. He turned as she approached, and she saw the controlled anger in his expression, the look she remembered from childhood, the look he got when someone had tried to take advantage of his family. How are you feeling, sweetheart? He asked. He embraced her carefully, mindful of her pregnant belly. Better now that I'm here, she said honestly. They were soon joined by Marcus, Isabella's older brother. He worked as a corporate attorney for a prestigious firm, but had always maintained close ties to the family business. At 35, Marcus shared their father's sharp intelligence and strategic thinking. He'd never liked Damien. His "I told you so" expression was barely contained as he hugged his sister. Sophia arrived shortly after, carrying a briefcase full of documents. The four of them settled around the conference table as Sophia laid out the evidence they'd gathered: bank statements, text messages, the preliminary divorce filing, the institutionalization plan. Each revelation was more damning than the last. Lucian's expression grew grimmer with each page. His fingers drummed once on the table, a tell Isabella remembered from childhood. It meant he was thinking, calculating, planning his next move. This level of financial manipulation requires inside knowledge, Marcus observed. He was scanning through the offshore account transfers on his laptop. Damien had help, probably from someone in his finance department or his banking connections. We need to identify his CO conspirators. We need to understand the full scope of his business operations. Lucien agreed. If he's been stealing from Isabella, he's probably been stealing from his company and his investors too. Men like Damien don't limit their crimes to one victim. What about the personal side? Isabella asked. The affair, the abuse, That gives us leverage in the divorce proceedings, Sophia explained. But the financial crimes are what will really destroy him. If we can prove he's been defrauding investors and manipulating company funds, his business empire will collapse. Everything he's built will come crashing down. Lucien leaned back in his chair. His mind was clearly working through possibilities, seeing moves ahead like a chess grandmaster. Damien's company has several major contracts with government agencies. If he's been engaging in financial fraud, those contracts will be terminated immediately. That alone would cripple his business. He'd be radioactive in the industry. How long do we have? Isabella asked. According to the investigator's timeline, Damien plans to file for divorce and have you committed within 2 weeks of the baby's birth, Sophia said. That gives us maybe 6 weeks to prepare our counterattack. We need to have everything in place before he makes his move. Then we'd better get started, Lucien said. He stood up, and his executive presence filled the room. For the first time since the hospital incident, Isabella felt truly safe. Damien picked the wrong family to mess with. As the meeting continued, they divided responsibilities with military precision. Marcus would handle the corporate investigation, using his legal connections to dig into Damien's business practices. Sophia would prepare the divorce strategy and work on protecting Isabella's rights as a mother. Lucien would begin applying pressure through his business networks, subtly turning Damien's partners and clients against him. What about me? Isabella asked. What's my role in all this? You're going to be the perfect wife, Lucien said. There was a slight smile on his face. Keep Damien thinking he's in control while we build our case. Can you do that? Isabella thought about the slap, about the text messages, about Damien's plan to steal her daughter and have her committed to a psychiatric facility. She thought about Olivia's smug confidence that she would soon have everything that belonged to Isabella. Yes, she said quietly, I can do that. But inside, she was already imagining the look on Damien's face when he realized he'd been outplayed. The Blackwell name might open doors in business circles, but the Moreau name could close them just as quickly. Damien was about to learn that lesson the hard way. 2 weeks into their investigation, the scope of Damien's crimes was becoming clear. Isabella sat in Marcus's law office reviewing financial documents that painted a picture of systematic fraud spanning several years. Her brother paced behind his desk, his anger barely contained as he explained what they'd discovered. Damien's been running a sophisticated shell game, Marcus said. He creates subsidiary companies, moves money between them to inflate revenue figures, then reports those inflated numbers to investors and lenders. It's textbook securities fraud, the kind that gets you federal prison time. The private investigator James Morton had expanded his team to include a forensic accountant and a former FBI financial crime specialist. Their preliminary report covered 37 pages and detailed a pattern of criminal activity that went far beyond simple embezzlement. The offshore accounts are the key, James explained. He pointed to a flowchart on his laptop screen, showing money moving through multiple countries. Damien's been funneling money through companies in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland. On paper, it looks like legitimate international business dealings. In reality, he's been stealing from his own investors to fund his lifestyle. Isabella felt sick as she looked at the numbers. Damien had stolen over $40 million from various sources, including her own trust fund. The money had paid for the penthouse, his collection of expensive cars, private jet travel, and gifts for Olivia, jewelry, vacations, a condo in Miami that was registered in Olivia's name. How did he think he'd get away with it? Isabella asked. Arrogance, Marcus said bluntly, and the fact that it's worked so far. His investors trusted him. His board of directors rubber stamped his decisions. His accountants either didn't look too closely or were paid to stay quiet. Damien built a house of cards, but he built it well enough that no one questioned it. Until now, James added. Lucien entered the office, carrying coffee for everyone. At 62, he moved with the confidence of a man who'd spent decades building and protecting his business empire. He'd been working his own network of contacts, and his expression suggested he had news. I've been talking to some people who've had dealings with Damien's company, Lucien said. He settled into a chair and distributed the coffee cups. The picture isn't pretty. He's got at least 6 major clients who are already having second thoughts about their contracts. Why? Isabella asked. Quality issues, missed deadlines, cost overruns, Lucien explained. Damien's been so focused on his financial schemes that he's been neglecting the actual business. His company is developing a reputation for unreliability. Word travels fast in our circles. Sophia arrived as they were reviewing the latest findings. She'd been working with a family court investigator to document Damien's fitness as a father and husband. Her report added another layer to their growing case. I interviewed 3 of Damien's former employees, she announced. All of them described a hostile work environment, verbal abuse, intimidation, sexual harassment complaints that were quietly settled with non-disclosure agreements. One woman said Damien told her that wives were just temporary business partnerships that could be dissolved when they became unprofitable. The words hit Isabella like a physical blow. She'd known Damien was cruel, but hearing it described so clinically made it worse somehow. It meant this wasn't personal. This was just who he was. There's more, Sophia continued. Candace isn't his first affair. He's had at least 3 other serious relationships during your marriage. Isabella. All of them were employees who were later forced out of the company when the relationships ended. We found the settlement agreements. He paid them off to keep quiet. So, this is a pattern, Marcus observed. Exactly, Sophia said. Damien uses his position to coerce women into relationships, then discards them when he's bored or when they become inconvenient. The only difference with Olivia is that she's lasted longer, and he's planning to make it permanent. She's apparently smarter than the others. She's been helping him hide assets. Isabella stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Somewhere out there, Damien was probably having lunch with Olivia, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. She felt her daughter kick, as if sensing her mother's distress. "What's our timeline?" she asked without turning around. "We need to move soon," Lucian said. "My contacts tell me Damien's been having private meetings with potential buyers for his company. He might be planning to sell everything and disappear with the money before anyone discovers what he's been doing." "How soon?" Isabella turned back to face the room. 2 weeks, Marcus said. "Maybe less. We need to have everything in place before he completes any sale. Once that money moves offshore, it becomes much harder to recover." They spent the next hour finalizing their strategy. Lucian would contact Damien's major clients and investors, sharing just enough information to make them nervous about their business relationships. Marcus would file complaints with the Securities and Exchange Commission and other regulatory agencies. Sophia would prepare a comprehensive divorce filing that would freeze Damien's assets and prevent him from leaving the country. "What about criminal charges?" Isabella asked. "Those will come," James assured her. "Once the regulatory agencies start investigating, they'll find enough evidence to hand over to prosecutors. Damien will be facing federal charges within a month. Wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, tax evasion. The list is long." As the meeting broke up, Lucian pulled Isabella aside. "Are you sure you're ready for this? Once we start this process, there's no going back. Damien will fight dirty, and it's going to get ugly. Your name will be in the papers. People will ask questions. Some will take his side." Isabella thought about the slap, about the text messages between Damien and Olivia, about his plan to have her committed and take her daughter. She thought about all the women he'd hurt, all the investors he'd cheated, all the lies he'd told. "I'm ready," she said firmly. "Damien made his choice when he decided to destroy me. Now he gets to live with the consequences." That night, Isabella returned to the penthouse and prepared dinner as if nothing had changed. When Damien arrived home, she greeted him with a smile and asked about his day. He seemed relaxed, confident, completely unaware of the storm gathering around him. Over dinner, he told her about his upcoming business trip to Chicago, the romantic getaway with Olivia that he thought she didn't know about. "I'll miss you," she said, playing her role perfectly. "I'll miss you too," he lied smoothly. "But this deal is important for our future, for our family's future." Isabella nodded and smiled, all while knowing that Damien's future was about to become very different from what he imagined. In 2 weeks, his world would begin falling apart. But tonight, she would let him think he was still in control. After all, the higher they fly, the harder they fall. Okay, can we just appreciate Isabella's growth right now? From hospital victim to warrior queen. If you're rooting for her, smash that like button and drop a fire emoji in the comments. And seriously, subscribe. You don't want to miss how this ends. The war room was established in Lucien's private conference suite, away from the main offices where corporate spies might overhear sensitive conversations. Maps of Damien's business empire covered the walls, marked with red pins indicating vulnerable points. Financial charts tracked money flows, partnership agreements, contract deadlines. It looked like a military operation, which in many ways it was. Isabella sat at the head of the table, 8 months pregnant, but more focused than she'd ever been in her life. The team had grown to include specialists in corporate law, financial crimes, media, relations, and private security. Everyone understood the stakes. They had one chance to take down Damien completely. Failure would leave Isabella and her daughter vulnerable to his revenge. Update on the investor situation, Lucien announced. He was reviewing his notes from a morning of phone calls. I've spoken with representatives from Damien's 5 largest backers. They're all expressing concern about irregularities in his financial reporting. 2 of them are already considering pulling their funding. Marcus looked up from his laptop where he was drafting regulatory complaints. The SEC complaint is ready to file. I've got enough evidence to trigger a full investigation which will freeze Damien's ability to move money or sell company assets. What about the criminal referral? Sophia asked. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is interested, Marcus replied. Once the SEC opens their investigation, the criminal case will follow automatically. Damien's looking at multiple felony charges. Isabella felt a surge of satisfaction followed immediately by a wave of sadness. This was the man she'd married, the father of her unborn child. Part of her still couldn't believe it had come to this. Any word from our inside source? She asked. James nodded. Patricia from Damien's accounting department confirmed that he's planning to move another $20 million to his offshore accounts this week. She's been secretly copying documents for us. Invoices, transfer authorizations, correspondence with the banks. Patricia was a senior accountant who'd been with Damien's company for 8 years. She'd approached James after learning about the investigation, revealing that she'd been documenting Damien's illegal activities for months, hoping someone would eventually hold him accountable. She's taking a huge risk, Isabella observed. She knows that, James replied. But she's tired of being complicit in his crimes. She wants to testify against him when this goes to court. The media strategy was equally important. Lucien had hired a top public relations firm to manage the story when it broke. The goal was to control the narrative, making sure the public understood that Isabella was a victim, not a co-conspirator. The initial story will focus on domestic abuse and adultery, the PR consultant explained. Those are issues people can relate to emotionally. Once that narrative is established, we'll gradually reveal the financial crimes. By the time Damien tries to defend himself, public opinion will already be against him. Isabella's phone buzzed with a text from Damien. Leaving for Chicago tomorrow morning. Take care of yourself while I'm gone. She showed the message to the room. He's still planning his romantic getaway with Olivia, Sophia said. Should we stop him? Isabella asked. No, Lucien said firmly. Let him go. It will be easier to serve him with papers when he's out of town and his guard is down. Plus the photos of him with Olivia in Chicago will be perfect for the media. The private investigator team had already positioned surveillance in Chicago. They would document every moment of Damien's business trip, creating an undeniable record of his affair that would destroy his credibility when he tried to claim Isabella was mentally unstable. What about Olivia? Isabella asked. What's her role in all this? She's been helping him hide assets, Marcus explained. Some of the offshore accounts are in her name. She's not an innocent victim. She's been an active participant in the fraud. She'll face charges too. That knowledge should have made Isabella feel better, but instead, it just made her feel hollow. Damien had chosen his accomplice well. Olivia was smart, attractive, and apparently as morally flexible as he was. She'll probably try to cut a deal when the investigation starts, Sophia predicted. Women in her position usually do. She'll testify against Damien in exchange for immunity. The security team briefed Isabella on personal protection protocols. Once the story broke, Damien would likely become desperate and unpredictable. They needed to ensure both Isabella's safety and the integrity of their evidence. We'll have plainclothes security with you at all times, the security chief explained. Your apartment is being monitored. Your car has GPS tracking. We've installed panic buttons in your office and your father's house. If Damien approaches you or tries to contact you, we'll know immediately. It felt like preparing for war, which Isabella supposed it was. Damien had declared war on her the moment he decided to steal her money, plan her imprisonment, and take their daughter. Everything they were doing now was just fighting back. The final briefing covered the timeline for their attack. Damien would leave for Chicago on Thursday morning. On Friday, while he was enjoying his romantic dinner with Olivia, the SEC would receive their complaint and issue a hold on his company's assets. On Monday morning, when Damien returned expecting to resume his normal life, he would find divorce papers, federal investigators, and a media storm waiting for him. "Are we sure about the timing?" Isabella asked. "Once this starts, there's no stopping it." "The timing is perfect," Lucien assured her. "Damien will be off balance, away from his support network, caught completely by surprise. By the time he understands what's happening, it will be too late for him to mount an effective defense." As the meeting ended, team members dispersed to handle their final preparations. Isabella remained behind with her father, feeling the weight of what they were about to unleash. "Any regrets?" Lucien asked gently. Isabella thought about the question seriously. She was about to destroy the man she'd once loved, the father of her child. Their daughter would grow up knowing her father was a criminal. The scandal would follow them for years. But then she remembered the slap, the contempt in Damien's voice, the text messages planning her imprisonment. She thought about all the people he'd hurt, all the money he'd stolen, all the lies he'd told. "No regrets," she said firmly. "Damien made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences." Thursday morning arrived with gray skies and cold rain. From her bedroom window, Isabella watched Damien's car disappear into traffic, carrying him toward the airport and his weekend with Olivia. He'd kissed her goodbye, told her he loved her, promised to bring her something special from Chicago. All lies, of course, but they were the last lies Damien Blackwell would ever tell her. The countdown had begun. Friday afternoon found Damien sipping champagne in a luxury suite at the Chicago Four Seasons, completely unaware that his empire was crumbling back in New York. He'd spent the morning in meetings with potential investors, pitching a new project that would require $50 million in funding. The meetings had gone well. Damien's charm and confidence had impressed the Chicago businessmen, just as they always did. Now he was relaxing before dinner, checking his phone for messages while Olivia showered in the marble bathroom. The suite overlooked Lake Michigan, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a spectacular view of the city skyline. Everything was perfect. Back in New York, Lucien was making the phone calls that would change everything. "Blackwell Technologies has been engaging in systematic financial fraud," he told Michael Harrison, CEO of Apex Technologies, one of Damien's biggest clients. "I'm sharing this information with you as a professional courtesy. My legal team has documented evidence of embezzlement, securities fraud, and money laundering." The silence on the other end was telling. Harrison had worked with Damien for 3 years, and their partnership was worth over $15 million annually. "That's a serious accusation, Robert," Harrison said carefully. "What kind of evidence are we talking about?" "Bank records, email communications, testimony from inside sources," Lucien replied. "The SEC will be receiving a formal complaint on Monday. I thought you should know before this becomes public." Similar conversations were happening across the city. Lucien's influence extended deep into New York's business community, and his reputation for integrity meant people listened when he spoke. By the end of the day, 6 of Damien's major clients had received similar warnings. Meanwhile, Marcus was coordinating with federal investigators. The preliminary SEC complaint had been filed under seal, triggering an immediate hold on Damien's corporate accounts. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit was already requesting additional documentation. "The beauty of this approach," Marcus explained to Sophia, "is that Damien won't know what hit him until it's too late. By the time he realizes his accounts are frozen, the investigation will be too far along to stop." Isabella spent Friday evening at her father's house, trying to stay calm while the first phase of their plan unfolded. She felt her daughter kicking restlessly, as if sensing her mother's tension. "She's going to be born into a different world," Isabella murmured, her hand on her belly. "A better world," Lucien assured her. "A world where her father can't hurt either of you anymore." Saturday morning brought the first cracks in Damien's facade. His assistant called while he and Olivia were having breakfast in their suite. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend," she said nervously, "but we've had some unusual calls. 3 of our major clients have requested immediate meetings to discuss their contracts. They all seemed very concerned about something." Damien frowned. setting down his coffee cup. What kind of concerns? They wouldn't say specifically, but they mentioned questions about our financial stability. Mr. Harrison from Apex was particularly insistent about meeting first thing Monday morning. A cold feeling settled in Damien's stomach. Financial stability questions didn't come out of nowhere. Someone was spreading rumors about his company, and he needed to find out who. "Get me a conference call with our top 5 clients for Sunday afternoon," he ordered. "I want to address whatever concerns they have before this gets out of hand." But when his assistant tried to arrange the calls, she found doors that had been open for years suddenly closed. Clients who'd previously been eager to speak with Damien were now unavailable or required their legal teams to be present for any discussions. "Something's wrong," Damien told Olivia as they walked along the lakefront that afternoon. "Someone's been talking to my clients, spreading lies about the company." "Who would do that?" Olivia asked. Her voice carried a note of worry that Damien was too preoccupied to notice. Damien's mind raced through possibilities. Business rivals, disgruntled employees, regulatory agencies. Any of them could be behind a coordinated attack on his reputation, but the timing seemed too convenient, too orchestrated. "I need to get back to New York," he decided. "We're cutting the trip short." Sunday's attempted conference calls confirmed Damien's worst fears. Of the 5 clients he tried to reach, only 2 agreed to speak with him, and both conversations were brief and uncomfortable. Damien. "I'm going to be direct," said Jennifer Walsh, CEO of Data Flow Systems. "I've been hearing rumors about irregularities in your financial reporting. Are you aware of any SEC investigations into your company?" "Absolutely not," Damien lied smoothly. "Our books are completely clean. I don't know who's been spreading these rumors, but I intend to find out." "I hope that's true," Walsh replied. "But until this situation is clarified, Dataflow will be suspending our current contract negotiations." The second call went even worse. Richard Chin from Pacific Ventures was blunt in his assessment. "Damien, I've known you for 5 years, and I've always respected your business acumen," he said. "But the information I'm receiving suggests serious problems with your company's finances. Until I have independent verification that everything is legitimate, Pacific Ventures is freezing all payments and considering termination of our partnership." By Sunday evening, Damien was in full panic mode. He'd cut short his romantic weekend and booked the first flight back to New York. Olivia seemed nervous and withdrawn, asking questions about their future together that Damien couldn't answer. "What if the rumors are true?" she asked as they waited in the airport lounge. "What if there really is an investigation?" "There's no investigation," Damien snapped. "This is just someone trying to destroy my reputation. When I find out who's behind it, they're going to regret it." But even as he said the words, Damien was mentally reviewing his recent activities, the offshore transfers, the creative accounting, the loans against assets that didn't technically belong to him. Any of those things could trigger an investigation if someone knew where to look. The flight back to New York was turbulent, matching the chaos swirling through Damien's mind. He spent the entire journey on his phone, trying to reach lawyers and accountants, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. By the time they landed at JFK on Sunday night, his carefully constructed world was already beginning to crumble. "Justice, tell me you felt that. If you're satisfied with Damien's downfall, let me know in the comments. And hey, if this story is hitting different, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this." Monday morning arrived with Isabella in labor. The contractions had started just before dawn, perfect timing, as if her daughter knew this was the day everything would change. Lucien rushed her to Mount Sinai Hospital, a different hospital than the one where Damien had struck her. That felt important somehow. A new beginning. Marcus met them in the maternity ward, pacing outside her room like a protective guard. Sophia arrived shortly after, coordinating legal documents between Isabella's contractions. The television in the room was tuned to the news on mute. Isabella could see the breaking headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screen. SEC launches investigation into Blackwell Technologies. CEO Damien Blackwell facing fraud allegations. Federal marshals detain prominent tech executive. Another contraction hit, and Isabella gripped her father's hand. The pain was intense, but cleansing somehow. She was pushing out more than just a baby. She was pushing out 5 years of lies, manipulation, fear. "You're doing great, sweetheart," Lucien said softly. "Just a little more." The baby came at 8:17 that morning, emerging into the world with a furious cry that echoed through the delivery room. Isabella heard that sound and started laughing through her tears. Her daughter had her father's dark hair, but Isabella's storm-gray eyes. "Hello, Vivienne," Isabella whispered, as the nurses placed the baby on her chest. "Welcome to the world. Your grandfather and I just burned down to keep you safe." The television caught her attention. Live footage showed Damien being escorted out of his office building in handcuffs. Federal agents surrounded him. Reporters shouted questions he couldn't answer. His expensive suit was rumpled, his perfect hair disheveled. The man who'd controlled boardrooms was now controlled by men in badges. Isabella watched for a moment, then looked back at her daughter. Vivienne was already nursing, determined and strong. This was what mattered. Not revenge, not justice. This tiny, perfect human who would never see her mother slapped, who would never doubt that she was loved, protected, valued. Dr. Patel came in to check on them, saw Isabella with her baby, and smiled. "You look different," she observed. "Lighter." "I am," Isabella said. "I'm free." The next few hours were a blur of visitors and well wishes. Marcus brought flowers. Sophia brought legal documents for Isabella to sign, finalizing the divorce proceedings and custody arrangements. Lucien sat in the corner, holding his granddaughter with tears in his eyes. Meanwhile, across the city, Damien's world continued its spectacular collapse. The SEC investigation had uncovered enough evidence in the first few hours to justify freezing all of Blackwell Technologies' accounts. The FBI had seized servers and financial records. 3 class action lawsuits had been filed by defrauded investors. The stock price had gone into free fall. By afternoon, the Wall Street Journal had published a comprehensive expose detailing Damien's financial crimes, his multiple affairs, and Isabella's dramatic escape with her family's help. Public opinion turned decisively against him. Social media exploded with hashtags. "Justice for Isabella" trended for 3 days straight. Former employees came forward with their own stories. Women he'd harassed. Analysts he'd pressured to falsify reports. Junior executives he'd bullied into silence. The picture that emerged was of a man who'd built his entire empire on exploitation and fraud. Olivia's betrayal became public on Tuesday. Page 6 ran photos of her boarding a private jet to the Maldives alone, bags of designer luggage suggesting she wasn't planning to return. An anonymous source, later revealed to be one of Damien's own lawyers, confirmed that Olivia had been skimming money into her own accounts for months, planning her own exit strategy. Damien had been betrayed by everyone, just as he'd betrayed everyone. The symmetry was almost poetic. Isabella never visited him. She didn't need to. She was busy building her new life. 6 months later, Blackwell Technologies was acquired in bankruptcy for pennies on the dollar by a shell company wholly owned by Moreau Global. The company was restructured, the corrupt executives replaced, the fraudulent practices eliminated. Under new management, it actually became profitable, fulfilling its original promise. Damien took a plea deal, 12 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole. His lawyers had tried every angle, every defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. Patricia, the accountant, testified. 3 of his former mistresses testified. His own emails and financial records testified. The case was airtight. Olivia testified against him too, in exchange for immunity. She'd helped prosecutors understand the full scope of his offshore schemes. Then she'd vanished into witness protection with whatever she'd managed to skim, living on it somewhere far from the luxury she'd craved. Isabella never spoke Damien's name again. When Vivienne was old enough to ask about her father, Isabella told her the truth in age-appropriate language. "Your father made some very bad choices that hurt a lot of people. He's paying the consequences for those choices. You have your grandfather and your uncle who love you very much. You have me. That's your family." Vivienne grew up in the new apartment overlooking Central Park, not the penthouse, something Isabella had chosen herself, something that felt like a home rather than a showroom. The nursery was decorated in soft creams and golds. Photos covered the walls. Isabella and Lucien, Marcus, holding baby Vivienne, Sophia at Vivienne's first birthday party. No trace of Damien anywhere. Isabella returned to work at Moreau Global as Vice President of Strategic Development. She brought Vivienne to board meetings in a carrier until she was old enough for daycare. Lucien's pride was evident every time he looked at them. His daughter had come home. His granddaughter was thriving. The family was whole again. Some nights Isabella walked the halls of her apartment, Vivian asleep against her shoulder, and she would pause at the window overlooking the city. Down there somewhere in a federal facility was a man who'd once owned half the skyline. Now he owned nothing, not even the memory of her love. She'd press her lips to Vivian's soft hair and smile. The higher they fly, the harder they fall. But some people, she'd learned, were born to fly higher than their oppressors ever could. Isabella Moreau had reclaimed her name, her power, her future. She'd learned that love without respect was just another form of prison. That strength came not from enduring abuse, but from having the courage to walk away and fight back. That family, the real kind built on loyalty and protection, was worth more than any empire built on lies. Vivienne kicked in her sleep, strong and healthy. Isabella held her closer. This was her revenge. Not Damien's imprisonment, though that was satisfying. Not the collapse of his empire, though that was just. Her revenge was this. A daughter who would grow up knowing her worth, who would never accept less than she deserved, who would understand that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is call for help. The city lights glittered below. Manhattan at night looked like scattered diamonds, beautiful and hard. Isabella had learned to be both, beautiful when she chose, hard when necessary. She thought about the woman she'd been in that hospital room 8 months ago, bleeding, terrified, believing she had no options. If she could go back and tell that woman anything, it would be this: you're stronger than you know. You're not alone. And the man who just struck you has already lost. He just doesn't know it yet. The ending had been written the moment Damien raised his hand. Everything after that was just watching the consequences unfold. Isabella smiled at her reflection in the window. Vivian stirred and settled back into sleep. Tomorrow there would be meetings and decisions and the ongoing work of building a life. Tonight there was just this: mother and daughter, safe, free, whole. So that's Isabella's story. From a hospital slap to a courtroom victory. From victim to CEO's daughter reclaiming her power. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in justice again, do me a favor. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling me what you took away from Isabella's journey. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? We've got more stories of karma, justice, and powerful comebacks coming your way. Hit that bell icon so you never miss one. Until next time, remember, you're stronger than you think, and nobody gets to write your ending but you.